going to start with a joke that I read in Clarity magazine, just because I like it. There was two brothers, little boys, and they were real troublemakers in the town in which they lived, and anytime there was any problem at all, they were the first ones people pointed to. And the mother, in despair, finally thought she would send these little boys to the priest in hope that the priest would be able to get them to be sensible. So the two boys went in, and they were waiting in the anteroom of the priest, and the older boy was taken in first, and the priest looked at him and said, "Where is God?" And the little boy just didn't know what to say. So the priest said it again, "Where is God?" And then he asked him a third time, and the little boy just ran from the room, grabbed his little brother, ran all the way home, climbed under the bed, and said to his little brother, "God is missing, and they think we did it." Doesn't it feel like that sometimes? Yeah. We just don't really quite know what we're doing here, or why, or where it is. There's an aspect of the Christmas story which has always interested me, which is the virgin birth. Because we're in the Jesus birth time. I mean, I didn't grow up Christian, I didn't grow up Catholic, so I never heard any orthodoxy of explanation of this, nor did I ever want to know, because I figured nobody knew, really. They would just have a theory about it. The only time I saw Master reference it was a very interesting paragraph where Master said something in one of the commentaries on the Bible that appeared in the SRF magazines that were, as Swamiji said, in need of editing. But that was Master's first draft of writing. And he referred to Joseph as Jesus' father, and then he put in parentheses, whether in a divine or in a human way, close parentheses, and then went on with his thought. I said, "Swamiji, why did Master just reference this in such an oblique way?" And Swami smiled and said, there were some things even Master wouldn't take on. And there were a lot of things about the teaching of Jesus that Master wouldn't take on. The idea which Swami Kriyananda became very persuaded of at the end of Swamiji's life, that Master himself had been Jesus in a previous incarnation. Master never talked about it, although he called his own coming, his own work, the second coming of Christ. He explained that very easily by saying this was a renewal of the teachings that Jesus brought, and that is sufficient explanation. And when Swamiji asked him directly, were you Jesus? Master's response was very interesting. What difference would it make? Was the answer he gave. And then that was the entire discussion, because, as Swamiji said, if Master had made such a claim, even in private, he said it would have distracted from everything else that he did. And even, it really is a good question, what difference would it make? Truth is truth, the personalities we're fascinated by, and it does, at a certain point, become fascinating in an expansive spiritual way, just to sort of get a picture of what this planet is really, what's really happening in this realm of creation. But really, what difference would it make? So on the question of the virgin birth, I really had very little authority. And then Devi, from Ananda Village, gave a seminar recently, and she gave such obvious symbolism for it. I was just so grateful, and in all these years, it had never occurred to me. She said, the birth of God into this world, the presence of God within us, has no cause. There's no logical reason for it. We don't have to earn it. We don't have to be good. We don't have to rise to a certain standard. It doesn't follow any of the rules that the human mind is so fond of. If this, then that. If this, then that. It's just that God is among us. God can be born without any intercession, because everything that happens is an expression of the divine. Isn't that the most beautiful, the most comforting way ever to think about it? And somebody somewhere along the line, who knows why? Perhaps it started as a metaphysical symbol. Perhaps it was just a desire to lift Jesus above all human considerations. But you see, even that, you see how valid that is? it's so difficult for the human mind to really grasp the reality of the divine. And I put myself right in the group who are baffled. You know, God is missing and they think we did it. I just don't know. I don't know how we got here. I don't know why we're here. I don't really know, even though I can talk a good story, how we actually get out of here. And I have not experienced that state of absolute transcendence that is described by these words that are on the walls, by the poem that's in the back. In the back in the frame is the poem Samadhi, the whole poem, and all of these lines are part of it. I, the cosmic sea, watch the little ego floating in me. Myself in everything enters the great myself. Every time we visualize that, we sort of take ourselves with us, don't we? The myself that enters is wearing our favorite outfit, perhaps. There's all these wonderful little stories about children writing letters to God and how they try to conceive it. One of the dearest ones to me was this little girl writing God a note saying, I got some new shoes, and when I go to church on Sunday, I'll show them to you. And I always have this picture of this little girl sitting next to her parents in church, and whatever else is going on, she's lifting up her feet like this, you know. She's showing God the bells on the back. You know, just with a child's heart, just wanting him to see, wanting him to know what is really happening to her. But when the masters talk, when they talk about the star that rises in the east that goes before, and how the wise men followed it, this was not an astronomical phenomenon. Lesser minds, you see, the human mind has to have a reason. So they saw a star, so they do all these calculations. Maybe it was this comet, and this comet was coming from here to there, and maybe there was this phenomenon. Master, there's a story about Master being in a discussion, I'll call it, with a very orthodox Bible, every word of the Bible is literally true kind of person. And he was having a discussion, and the man was insisting that every word in the Bible is literally true. And apparently Master said, what about the story of Adam and Eve when the snake talked to Eve? And the man said, in those days, snakes could talk. It doesn't cause any difficulty once you want to go there. William James, the great philosopher, was giving a talk once talking about the nature of the universe. Apparently an old woman came up to him afterward and said, you know, all that you're talking about the nature of creation, Mr. James, Dr. James, is entirely wrong. The entire world sits on the back of a great big turtle. And Dr. James said, very interestingly, and then what is under that turtle? And she said, well, another turtle. And he said, and under that turtle? And she said, you can't fool me. It's turtles all the way down. Right? And that's oftentimes what our mind wants to do, isn't it? We start down a little track, and then it's turtles all the way down. So we have to have something come in, truthfully, that just completely breaks it. Jesus was born and he was a baby, but he was a virgin birth. Actually, it even goes back that Mary's mother also was not conceived in an ordinary way, because we have to sort of, I don't know, it has to be turtles all the way down. But if instead of mocking it, we actually become more like little children, and we say, why not? Why is it that everything has to match our little human way of doing it? How does that really work for us? What is that really giving us? Swamiji, when he was born, his first childhood years, in essence, he didn't come out of the astral or the spiritual world. He just lived much more in a world outside of this one. And he talks about how every night when he would fall asleep, he would see this beautiful light, and he would stare into that light until he was absorbed in that light. And as a child, he had no context at all, and he thought everyone went to sleep that way. He didn't even know it was unusual. Everybody went into their rooms and went to sleep. He thought they were having the same experience. He was happy. And he was blissfully happy. And there was also just the pure innocence of childhood. He was adored by his parents. He was well taken care of and well brought up. And in every way, he just lived this life of perfect happiness. As he grew older, and about the age of 9, he began to see the difference between himself and his father, which he characterizes as himself. He was a philosopher and his father was a scientist. Swamiji would ask why. His father would ask how. And they didn't ever match. But for Swamiji, in the Leela, the divine play of his life, he began to see that he was the one who was out of step, and that there was this whole world that he needed to relate to. And he started literally bringing his consciousness here. And he started resisting the light even at night. Now, when he grew older, and it was only in his late teens and so on, he had become that kind of person. Everything had a cause, everything had a reason. Again, this is a divine Leela, because of a free soul like Swamiji. It's a bit hard to explain, but you put on the costume, you play the part, you give yourself wholeheartedly to what you're doing, but some part of you knows still that you're playing a role. But if you're a good actor and you're doing what the director asks you to do, you can't simultaneously be yourself and the part you're playing. You know, you can see the difference between good, competent actors and really great actors. Good actors, they're always still themselves no matter what the part is. Great actors, they become the part. And these great saints, great masters, they become the part. But Swamiji felt, just before he met Master when he was 22, he said he always remembered that joyful freedom of his childhood. And he saw how dry he had become. Always reasoning, always thinking, always being intellectual, always analyzing, always bringing in what he'd read, what he knew. And then he remembered the pure, direct joy of being that was his childhood, without all that interfering. And that was what he longed for. And when he came to Master, he saw in Master, you see, there is that freedom of pure, well, ignorance almost. Innocence, ignorance, whatever you want to call it. Where we're happy because we've never been tested. And it's easy then to be very joyful, and that's one of the reasons many children are joyful. They're not really great souls, but they exemplify for us the potential of our own greatness by enjoying the tissue paper in which the present is wrapped as much as they enjoy the present. You know, but it's also a certain kind of stupidity, really. Stupidity based on the lack of mature awareness. So what we have to come to as devotees, and why we come to Christmas every single year, why the world is created in these never-ending cycles, is so that we can climb this spiral staircase, where the first experience we have, and this is why we forget, people are always asking, if we have reincarnated, why don't we remember? Just imagine what agony that would be. What if every struggle, every disappointment, every broken dream, and every fulfillment now vanished were in our conscious awareness when we took a new body? It's a really horrible thought, is what it really is, isn't it? You know, time, the remembrance of past, the anticipation of future, in an odd sort of way, is the greatest enemy of happiness. I had to give some seminars on finding happiness, which is the name of the movie we made about Ananda. And when I was meditating on how to do that, I started, and I have always started when I teach that subject now, with the issue of time and how much our deep identification with this moment is actually the cause of our greatest misery. Because then whatever is happening in this moment looms so large to us that we forget that it's always the eternal now. And if we were born remembering all of that past, how very difficult it would be to live in this moment. It's already difficult enough, isn't it? But we're given that freedom. We're given that no context, no words, no capacity to explain. But you see, we have our full intelligence and our total consciousness. A baby is every bit of who he will be or she will be when they're a grown person. They just have no vocabulary and no context. And so they just experience everything as consciousness. And they don't remember yesterday, and they don't even have any idea what tomorrow is. Do you remember how long a day was for a child? When you were a child? Oh, we'll go next week. Is it next week yet, Mommy? Is it next week now? Is it next week now? I'm going to tell a story which I believe is about the son of one of the people in our congregation. And if I've got it wrong, it's so good the way I tell it, you can correct me afterwards. He was a boy and he was outside playing basketball with his friends. He was about 9. And he kept coming into the house and he kept asking, Mommy, what time it is? It was about 10 or 11 in the morning. What time is it? What time is it? And he was very eager. She finally said, honey, why do you want to know? Well, one of the boys said that puberty starts at 12. And he was really eager to grow up. He didn't know what that meant. And it would be now, as soon as it was 12, he would become a teenager. What fun. We have no idea. But there is this other thing that when we don't know, and we're joyous because we're ignorant, then as soon as trials come, it's gone. But then there's the power of a saint. And I've been contemplating Swamiji's life, which I know well, quite a lot lately. And he had so many challenges in his life. Above all, early on, relatively, being rejected by all his gurubhais. And to his last breath, their antipathy toward him never abated. There was never reconciliation. There was never softening. Up to the age of 36, from 22 to 36, these were his dearest friends, his fellow disciples and his closest friends. From 36 till his death at 86, he was considered to be the greatest enemy of Master's work. And there was never any reconciliation. But constantly, he just put forth joyful energy, persevered, and did what he thought he needed to do, even to try to reconcile that relationship to his very last breath, to his last will and testament, if it is at all possible after I am gone, to create harmony. Let it be known that it is my dearest wish that we should do so. And when I asked him once, many times I asked him, how do you hold this attitude? He said, why lose twice? You lose once when someone hurts you. You lose twice if you allow that bitterness to grow in your heart. I am simply happier when I love. Now, that's wisdom, and that's the innocence of great experience. And this is what we're all seeking in our lives. And God is not so interested in the small stuff. He's really interested in the long story. Even this exquisite story of Jesus, here is the little innocent baby, like this. But we all know where the story ends. But we blind ourselves a bit, don't we? The angels and the shepherds and the wise men and the baby and the beautiful songs. And we sing the Three Wise Men song. We change the words because one of the wise men sings, myrrh I bring its bitter perfume, breathes a life of gathering gloom, sorrowing, sighing, grieving, dying, sealed in a stone cold tomb. That's the traditional verse. We switched it a little because we just couldn't bear it. It was just too much, especially the sealed in the stone cold tomb. Right from his birth, let's be miserable. Okay? But on a certain level, we have to, I don't know what I mean by this. We have to be really wise And what the wise men followed was the star. And that star is the spiritual eye. And the star itself is the doorway into Christ consciousness. And in the midst of all of this, whatever it is, whether it is this beautiful innocence of the rising child or his inevitable fate sealed in the stone-cold tomb, which actually simply means the rise of darkness, making an effort to snuff out the light. But of course, the next verse of that, glorious now, behold him arise, Lord and King and sacrifice. Alleluia, alleluia. That's the same song. So it doesn't just end with the seal cold tomb. But doesn't it just go like this? On and on and on, and on and on and on. Today happens to be the winter solstice, which is a very interesting day. This is the darkest day. And everything from here, everything in future improves from here. But it improves from here until we get to here again, doesn't it? And as soon as we get to here again, we sort of go through this, And it's the living in the eternity now. We stand at the center and just watch all of this emanate. And just watch it emanate and watch it rise and watch it fall and watch it rise and watch it fall. But then we get sucked in. And even the myself and everything, the myself that enters in looks a lot like us. It doesn't look like infinite light until we transform ourselves. And so the causeless birth of divinity within us that doesn't have to be earned, that isn't affected by all the ups and downs. Swamiji said on a talk that I was listening to, he said it so casually. He said, the only purpose of life is to transform our consciousness, to overcome ego, to know ourselves as the infinite, as we truly are. Whether that process is pleasurable or painful doesn't make any difference. It doesn't matter to us, he said to us. To him, maybe. It matters to the rest of us. We grab it. We look longingly to the past. We look with trepidation to the future, or with wild anticipation, thinking it will be better in the future. And we make ourselves crazy by always just clinging to the edge, instead of just realizing there's a virgin birth, a causeless, completely separate, absolutely outside of anything we know, constant reappearance of this light. And the more we can hold to that, there is no other solution. We try pretty much everything else. And every incarnation we think this is the one when it's actually going to work. We actually think this one, we've got it together enough that this time I'm going to make it through unscathed all the way to the end. But Swamiji tells us, and it's grim, all karma always has to neutralize. Every wave that goes up has to come down. Every external expectation that this finally will hold. And this will be it for me. It just can't. Because the true birth of divinity is outside of that. It's causeless. It's the pure virgin birth of God loving us, giving to us, enlightening us, freeing us, because he has never been away from us. He has always been our own. So when this tiny baby appears as the baby Jesus, embrace him with everything that you are. And more than that, take even that symbol, bring it right into your heart, and nurture it with everything that you have. For it is the only true source of joy. God bless you.